Raymond Francis. He is author. Well, he's working on a cancer book right now, but he wrote the fabulous book, Never Be Sick Again and Never Be Fat Again. Raymond Francis, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Good to be back with you.
Well, thank you. What I really love is how you break illness down to just, I mean, it's very simple. It boils down to two things. Can you share those with our listeners?
Sure. Health is all about cells. We are all made of little units of life called cells. We all started life as one single cell in our mother. So health is really about the health of your cells. So you have to keep every cell functioning normally. When you do that, you'll be healthy. You can't be sick. If every cell is functioning normally, you cannot be sick. You cannot be in pain. Nothing is going to be wrong. There's only two reasons why cells malfunction. And on the bottom line, the common denominator of all disease is this: deficiency and toxicity. The cells are either not getting everything that they need to function as they should, or they're getting something that is interfering with their normal function. And so either too little or too much. And that's
very
the key.
Good. Well, can you tell the listeners some of these toxins that they are getting too much of? A lot of people are not aware of it, and a lot of people don't read the labels. They just see that it says, oh, this is good for me, or oh, this is low fat. So what are these things that we are taking in that are so toxic to ourselves?
It's almost everything. we live in a toxic environment. I mean, the air has been poisoned, the water is poisoned, the food is poisoned, our clothing, our household furnishings. I mean, everything is poisoned. And today we're all in toxic overload. The average American is bioaccumulating hundreds of man-made chemicals in their body, hundreds. And we know that these things are toxic to begin with. We also know this, that when you combine them, the toxicities goes up by thousands of times. So you can have, say, 3 toxins that are relatively not too toxic by themselves. If you mix them up, they become thousands of times more toxic. So that's the situation we're in. Every American is in toxic overload. We've got all these toxins combined, and we don't know it because, you see, we can't see them. So out of sight, out of mind. We don't think of them. If you're not a chemist, you really don't think of them. So you use products every day. You go to the store, you buy a tube of toothpaste. You think, well, I'm buying this toothpaste. It's got to be okay, otherwise it wouldn't be on the market, right? No, it's not okay. It's loaded with toxins, and you're being poisoned by it. And it's the same thing with, you buy a bottle of shampoo. Again, loaded with toxins. Well, there are safe toothpastes. There are safe shampoos. All you need to do is make different choices, and you can still use those products, but they'll be safe and they won't harm you. And it's the same thing with our processed foods, loaded with toxins, because when you process a food, you take all the nutrition out, and you take out the flavor, and you take out the color. So you got to add all this back. You got to add flavors, artificial flavors. Then you got to add flavor enhancers, and then you got to add artificial colors, and then you got to add artificial preservatives. And by the time you're through, you've really got it's a toxic food. And this is the 90 cents out of the American food dollar is spent on processed foods. And processed foods are deficient in nutrition and loaded with toxins. And we go right back to your last question there about what causes disease: deficiency and toxicity. So when you eat processed foods, they're deficient, they're toxic. So what you buy at the supermarket, I don't even call the supermarket a supermarket. I call it the disease store. That's where you buy. That's where you buy disease.
That's an excellent description. You know, and you have a background in science and MIT trained. I think it's important for the listeners to know that about your background. See, I scream at them every day telling them to make better choices, but, you know, I'm just a dumb blonde, don't have a degree in science and chemistry as yourself. So why don't you tell them a little bit about your background, and then when you put this all together due to your own health circumstances?
Well, Christie, you know, we can't be too hard on people, because here I am. I'm a chemist. I'm a graduate of the top scientific school in the entire world. I didn't know this stuff. I used to eat a regular diet just like everybody else. It wasn't until I got sick and almost died, and I had to save my own life, that's when it caught my attention, and that's when I started thinking about it. And it didn't take me too long before I started to say, oh my gosh, you know, look at all this. And I was 6 months into it when I realized that, you know, conventional medicine is so far behind the science that at this point it's irrelevant. It really is irrelevant. I mean, if you have a medical emergency, you know, if you're in an auto accident or something, you'll get the best care in the world here in America. You really will. But if you have a chronic disease like cancer and heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's and osteoporosis and arthritis, forget it. Forget it. Your doctor doesn't have a clue as to what to do. And what they do is they give you dangerous toxins that make you sicker, and then they chop you up into smaller pieces as if that was supposed. How do you enhance somebody's health by chopping them up into pieces? I mean, please explain to me how that's supposed to work. You know?
Or radiating them, yeah.
Or radiating them, you know. It's just, boy, you know, you've got a medical problem. Oh, come over here. We'll chop you up into pieces, and you'll feel better. No, thank you. No, thank you. It is the same thing.
It's kind of archaic, given all of the technology and knowledge that we have. Barbaric, absolutely. What's going on?
Yeah, well, medicine moves at the speed of a snail. You know, the amount of technical information available in the world doubles every 2 years. I mean, that's how fast the science is going. The science is just going at the speed of a rocket ship. Well, medicine is going at the speed of a snail. And so the science has so outpassed medicine that there's no way you can save it. And if it was just me saying this, you might say, well, you know, there's this crazy chemist, and he, you know. But let me tell you something. Just a few years ago, the National Academy of Sciences came out with a report, and they said that the difference between the medicine that we have and the medicine that we should have based on our advances in science, that difference is not a gap. They called it a chasm. And they went on to say in this report that this chasm is now so vast that there's no way we can bring modern medicine up to date. We need to discard what we have and start over again. And that's one of the reasons I wrote Never Be Sick Again. Because Never Be Sick Again is a whole new way to think about health and disease. It's a whole new way to do medicine. We have doctors all over the world who have read Never Be Sick Again, who are communicating with us and saying, I'm changing the way I practice medicine. I read your book, and I'm changing the way I practice medicine.
Absolutely. And it just boils down to wanting to be well and making better choices. It's, you know, it really is that simple. And I know, too, because I basically lived through the same medical nightmare as yourself. And I learned, well, you know, I don't have the background or knowledge that you have, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, you know, when you go to the doctor and they give you one pill and then that causes another problem, of course, that's just suppressing your immune system to mask a symptom. And then a year later, you're on 14 different drugs and you're not getting better, you're getting worse. It's
and
like,
now you're dizzy and you're falling down and you're tired and it's a downhill spiral.
in your article here about cancer, called Cancer, Turning It Off, you explain from the time they designated the war on cancer that, you know, we've sent them hundreds of billions of dollars, and all that's happened is it has increased cancer.
That's right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, we have more. Well, it was back in 1971 that President Nixon signed that bill that essentially declared war on cancer and made all kinds of billions and billions of funding available for cancer research. And since that time, the amount of cancer has actually increased. And in truth, if you really look at the numbers and examine the numbers carefully, you'll find that not only has the amount of cancer increased, but actually the death rate from cancer has increased. Now, they don't want to tell you that. In fact, if you have metastasized cancer today, if your cancer has metastasized, your chances of survival are less than 1%, far less than 1%. So if you have metastasized cancer, you're as good as dead if you pursue conventional treatment. If you pursue the surgery and the chemotherapy and the radiation, your chances of survival are far less than 1%. So those aren't good statistics, and the cancer industry doesn't want you to know that. And for very good reasons, obviously. But we don't have to live with that, because there are other ways of thinking about cancer. And let me explain to you, cancer is probably the most scary word in the human language. Somebody says you have cancer, and your life has changed in an instant. And people live in fear of having someone say that to them. Well, you don't have to live in fear, because there's only one disease, and that's a malfunctioning cell, cells that don't work right. When we call cancer is a cell that is malfunctioning in a way that its normal growth control mechanisms have been damaged, and so the cell continues to grow. It just doesn't stop growing. Now, you want cells to grow. I mean, we start life as one cell, and now we're all tens of trillions of cells. How do you get there? Well, you tell cells to divide. If you injure yourself and you have to repair, you cut your finger, you want to repair it, cells have to divide. Cells have to grow. If you want to build muscle, cells have to grow. So having cells divide and having cells grow, this is good, but it's all carefully controlled. We have control mechanisms that control when the cells grow, when they don't. What cancer is when those control mechanisms have been broken and the cell now continues to divide. That's what cancer is. So it's very simple. It's just a cell that continues to divide. And why do cells malfunction? Well, we know there's only two reasons. They either don't have what they need to function properly, or they're getting something that's interfering with their function, so it goes right back to deficiency and toxicity. So cancer is no different than any other disease. It's the result of deficiency and toxicity at the cellular level. All you have to do is pay attention to the deficiency and toxicity. Remove the deficiency and toxicity. The cell will revert to normal function. And when it does that, the cancer goes away. It's so simple.
What would you recommend? Say we have people listening to the show right now who has a mother or a family member or somebody with cancer. What's the first thing you would tell them to do?
Do not follow conventional medicine. That's the first thing I tell them to do. There are situations where surgery does have some effectiveness. If the cancer has not metastasized, there are times when surgery can be beneficial. But as for chemotherapy and radiation, they do more damage than good, and they don't help anybody. And everybody knows that chemotherapy doesn't work, but they use it anyway. In fact, they've taken polls of oncologists, And more than 75% of all oncologists say they would not use chemotherapy on themselves or on a family member. And when they ask them why, they say because chemotherapy is useless and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then they use it on 75% of all cancer patients.
Yeah, they're pretty quick to get people into these programs. You know, we had somebody who used to come on our show who had also left mainstream medicine when she found out what it was about. But what we learned from her is that they don't have proper statistics because the American Cancer Society actually eliminates the patients who died during treatment from their numbers.
Right.
So the statistics that they use, you know, saying that they have a 50% cancer cure rate is an outright lie. They remove the people who died from the statistics. How can you do that?
Yeah, well, they do it. The survival statistics are completely fictitious, completely fictitious. For example, lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer death. So if it's the leading cause of cancer death, you would certainly expect that to be in the statistics, right? No, they leave lung cancer out of the statistics. So the leading cause of cancer death is left out of the statistics. We also know that Caucasian Americans have a lower death rate from cancer than colored Americans. So guess what? They leave colored Americans out of the survival statistics. And then another thing that happens is that most people today actually don't die from cancer. They die from their treatment. And when you die from your treatment, they don't put that in the statistics. For example, when I was a student at MIT, my very best friend that I had when I was a student died just a few years ago, and I didn't even know he was sick. I didn't find out till after he was dead. But he got cancer. They gave him chemotherapy. The chemotherapy, mangled his immune system, destroyed his immune system. So he got pneumonia, and he died of pneumonia. So his death is recorded as a pneumonia death, not as a cancer death. And this happens all the time. So the death from the treatment is not considered to be a death from cancer. And then the increased survival is also based on how you define cure. The cancer industry is such a dismal failure that they've had to completely invent a whole new definition for the word cure. So in cancer, cure means that you're alive 5 years after diagnosis. So if you die one day and 5 years and 1 day after diagnosis, you have been cured. Some cure. I mean, and what's happened is that with better diagnostic techniques, we're now diagnosing cancer on average about 6 months earlier than we ever did before. And so if you're diagnosed 6 months earlier, guess what? And you're supposed to be alive 5 years after diagnosis, more and more people are now alive 5 years after diagnosis. So they're saying this is increased cancer survival. It isn't. It has nothing to do with the treatments. It just has to do with the fact that we're diagnosing them earlier. So it's really the whole cancer industry is an incredible scam. And even cancer research is a scam. And in fact, Linus Pauling, who was one of the top chemists of the 20th century and Nobel Prize winner, he once said that most cancer research is a fraud. And it is. They've spent hundreds of billions of dollars on cancer research, and more people are dying from cancer now than ever before. They've spent all that money.
Yeah, it's like everybody has some type of cancer anymore.
Yeah.
I wish people would realize it's what we're putting in our bodies, and that the medical industry is. It's a fraud. I'm sorry, it's a fraud. They don't make money off of getting you well. They make money off of keeping you sick. So we have to make sure choices.
Well, there is no money in healthy people, and there is no money in dead people. The money is in the middle. So
that is true. That is true. You know,
yeah.
I'm one of those weirdos that actually think that the people in charge of the medical industry and the drug industry and the FDA, our government looking out for us, I believe that they're actually doing this on purpose. I don't know. Is that so crazy, or do you think there could be another reason?
Well, they are doing it on purpose, but it's not to hurt people. It's really for commercial reasons. You know, they're looking for a way to make a dollar, and they're doing it, but they just don't really understand the true ramifications of what they're doing. They don't have the knowledge to understand all the ramifications, and if they did, maybe they wouldn't be doing it. But they certainly don't know, and it's not working for us. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is it's not working for us.
Are you saying that it's maybe the doctors that really don't know because of their medical training,
they don't.
or
yeah, medical
the
training is the doctors aren't. Are they clueless? Their medical training is extremely limited. First of all, you know, health is really all about biochemistry. Well, the doctors don't know any biochemistry. And what do they learn in school? Well, they learn anatomy, and they learn nomenclature, and they learn how to diagnose problems, and they learn how to prescribe drugs and how to do surgery. They don't learn anything about how to improve human health. And as a result, they don't know
years of medical school, and they're just taught how to treat symptoms with a man-made drug.
Right, exactly. And to the point where the average medical doctor actually dies younger than the average American. So it shows that they can't even help themselves.
Yeah,
they don't know enough to help themselves.
But I do think the guys at the top, the FDA and people like that, I think they do know, or they wouldn't be suppressing cures for cancer and other diseases such as the Gerson Clinic, or make it illegal for a reporter to write anything with the word cancer in it unless it's approved by the American Cancer Society. It's almost like they want everyone sick taking their drugs.
The world is changing out there. I think that more and more people are understanding that medicine doesn't work. More and more doctors are understanding that what they do doesn't work. And so I think there's a huge change out there. I mean, just look at how the market has shifted to alternative medicine, and it keeps growing every year. So obviously something is happening.
Sound guy, do you have a question for Raymond?
I have a couple if we have time.
I think we can make time.
Okay, thank you. When we were talking about, I loved it. I was making notes, and when you first started, I wrote down the word processed food, and your next sentence went into defining it. Can you share with our listeners, or did you find out just exactly where they create the flavors to add back flavor to this dead food that they sell us?
Oh, sure. Now, there are chemical companies that just specialize in artificial flavors. That's all they do. In fact, most of them are in New Jersey, but there are companies there that just specialize in making artificial flavors. So if you want a butter flavor, or if you want a butterscotch flavor, or whatever you want, they make it. And you can buy it, and you can put it into your processed food.
Amazing. Is there any truth? I had read a couple of articles that suggested that there were three major companies in New Jersey, primarily that supply this country and most of the world with artificial flavors, but they're actually German companies. They have proprietary processes, and even our government doesn't know what they do to create flavor. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, there is truth to that. Very much so. Very much so.
Okay.
And of course it's proprietary. You see, they don't want to disclose how they create their flavor because the flavor is proprietary. So you don't want things with artificial flavors. You don't want things with artificial colors or artificial preservatives. Stay away from the processed foods. That's the only way to stay healthy. Stay away from processed foods.
Well, and to stay on that track just a little bit further, in essence, what they're doing, from what I understand, what they do is that they use this little this chemical that is actually an explosive when it gets in around heat, and so when the product hits our mouths and our body temperature, it in essence explodes and releases a gas which hits the nose glands, the Aphrodite glands, I can't pronounce the word, at any rate, our smell glands, because our tongue basically only has 4 flavor areas, pretty dull instrument as far as eating, but our nose, so they actually, in giving our food flavor, they actually just trick us with smell. Is there any truth to that?
Well, they do trick us, absolutely. Smell is very much a part of the flavor experience, and so smell is very important. But then they have flavor enhancers, and these are a class of compounds called glutamates. And I'd say about 75% of all processed foods contain glutamates, and for good reason, because when you process the food, the flavor is destroyed, and so what little flavor is left, what you can do is add a flavor enhancer, and that amplifies the little flavor that's left. So it takes it and revs it up, and it does that by stimulating the body's nervous system. The problem is that it stimulates the body's nervous system so much that you can actually damage the nervous system as a result of that. So it's not too good.
Amazing. Can you, while we have time, and we can continue after the break, but can you explain to us and our listeners why cancer now? And it's my understanding we really didn't have a problem. Humanity didn't have a problem with cancer, say 60 years ago, or through a big amount of time. Why now?
Well, cancer has always been with us. I mean, even Hippocrates recorded cases of cancer, but it was extremely rare, very rare disease. In America, back in the 19th century, 1 out of 1,000 people got cancer. 1 out of 1,000. 100 years ago, it was already an epidemic. 30 out of 1,000 were getting cancer. Today, just under 500 out of 1,000 will get cancer. In other words, almost half of all Americans will get cancer in their lifetime. And in fact, it's going up every year. So what's going to happen is, it's going to be over half of all Americans that are going to be getting cancer in their lifetime very soon. We have to do something about that. We have to stop causing it. And we're causing it. We know what is causing it. We know how to prevent it. We know how to reverse it. So let's get on with it.
So cancer just was a part of our lives, but because of hard work and a healthy diet and very low toxicities, it just never did overrun us. Would that be
very rare, very rare. And in my book, And Never Be Sick Again, I talk about the healthy populations like the Hunza, the Vilcabamba, the Titicacas. The Hunza never experienced cancer. It never happened. It just simply never happened. So it was an extremely rare disease, and there's no reason to have this epidemic that we have. So we can prevent this epidemic. We can get rid of it. We know how to do that. So again, let's get on with it. Let's prevent it. Let's do what we need to do, and stop eating the processed foods. Get off of the sugar. Get off of the white flour. Get off of the processed oils. In my books, I talk about the big 4, and the big 4 are sugar, white flour, processed oils, dairy, and excess animal protein. These are the big 4. That's what's causing our epidemic of chronic disease, and we just need to get off of those foods because they're not foods. They're toxins. And the thing is, again, you see, where's the money? The money is in diagnosing, and the money's in treating. That's where all the research dollars have gone, into better diagnosing, better treating. Nothing has, very, very little has gone into understanding the causes of cancer and how to cure cancer.
I posted some of our health shows on YouTube and got a few interesting comments, like, oh, if you don't believe in doctors, well, next time you have a baby, don't go there. And it's like, hello.
Well, hello, whoever
They've been
needed
delivering babies for thousands of years.
Yeah, thousands of years without doctors. I mean, hello.
So, and once again, it's making better choices. What you talk about in your books. We don't have to succumb to that tyranny. I mean, they would literally have to kidnap me in the middle of the night, blindfolded, to get me to a doctor.
Well, they can do that. They'll be happy to accommodate you.
Well, I tell you, a lot of people say live free or die, but I say live free and die free.
Right.
I believe in freedom wholeheartedly, and nobody will force me to do anything I don't want to do.
Much better choice.
Tell us about how hard it was for you to switch, Raymond.
Well, it wasn't hard because I had an enormous incentive. I was dying. and I had to save my own life. And then after I saved my life, I was totally disabled, and I had to restore my health. So the incentive I had was just, totally enormous. The hard part for me was learning what to do because I didn't know any of this stuff back then. So it was the learning was the hardest part. But now, of course, I've helped others by writing books on what I've learned. So other people can benefit from what I've learned.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I'll stop interrupting here and let Sound Guy get back to his questions. Sound Guy.
Well, and you interrupt so well, and it's enjoyable. But thank you. I haven't been to a doctor for my health in 24 years. And I don't get to eat as healthy as I should. But I have seen a big change since I quit eating junk processed foods and am in an undisclosed location far away from the city and must live off of, again, not the best substances, but they're not the fast food processed substances. So all that to say, what does our thoughts, what we think and feel have to do with our health?
Absolutely enormous. Every single thought has a biological consequence. In fact, it is not possible to have a thought without a biological consequence. So what you think, what you believe, what you put into your mind on a daily basis is one of the most important things that you can do for your health. What you put into your mind every day is probably even more important than what you put into your mouth. So that being said, we can police what we put into our mind. We have control over that, just like we have control into what we put into our mouths. So that's the good news, and that's really good news because what could be cheaper than you want to talk about inexpensive medicine? That's the most inexpensive medicine you can have. And I even have a little mantra that I say every day, and I say every day in every way I'm getting better and better and stronger and stronger. And I didn't invent that. That's old. But I say it every day, and it's really important because after a while, your subconscious accepts that as an instruction, and then your body actually starts to get stronger and better every single day because you're telling it to do that. So pretty wonderful. It's inexpensive. Anybody can do it.
Well, how did you take control of your thoughts? I mean, what was, or do you have any advice to our listeners on that activity of controlling thought?
It was a gradual process. Once I realized how important thoughts were, it was a gradual process. And I'll give you a specific example. Stress is very important. It has a very negative effect on our health. Years ago, if I'd be in a stressful situation, let's say, for example, I had a meeting in the city, and I had to drive across the Golden Gate Bridge, and there was a traffic jam, and I was going to be late for my meeting. I'd be looking at my watch. My stress levels would be going up. By the time I got to the meeting, I'd be pretty stressed. I don't do that anymore because now if I start to feel stress, I catch myself and I say, wait a minute. If I put stress on myself, all I'm going to do is make myself sick. And I'm not going to get to the meeting any faster. So now I do deep breathing. I do relaxation. So I take the very, very same stressful situation and I've turned it into a relaxing situation. Anybody can do this. You don't have to be stressed. You can take command. You can take control of what you put into your mind. You can take control of how you react to situations. And we need to start doing that.
I couldn't agree with you more on that our thoughts. What did your research or your sense or feeling on not only what goes into our minds, but what comes out, what our words, what comes out of our mouth?
Well, that too has an effect not only on ourselves, but it has an effect on those around us. And so we have to be cognizant of this. Words have power, not only for us, but for others around us. And positive words and loving words and just even courtesy, just normal courtesy in treating people. It just will enhance your own health as well as the health of people around you. So it is important to you. You do have an influence that way.
Raymond, thanks so much again for being here tonight. You're a wonderful guest, a wonderful wealth of information, and I just hope that people really are listening and taking your advice and from your own personal example on how people really can end disease 100% naturally. I thank you for all you're doing, getting the word out there in your radio show and videos and books.
Well, thank you, Christie, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and God bless you. You're doing such a fabulous job for your listeners.
Thank you so much. You are such an inspiration. Let's try to get through a couple callers in this break. Our first call is from Michigan. Welcome to Truth Brigade Radio.
I got a question about the all you have to do is think, and that can happen. So in view of the fact that I'm being attacked with directed energy weapons, all I have to do is think that this energy is directed back at that person, and that will happen?
Sure.
Really?
Yeah, you have that power. You have that power. So just use it. See, that's the trouble. We don't use the power. The only way people can direct something at you is by using their power. But you use yours, and it just negates it. Just see that as just disappearing into the, it's like a cloud just breaking up into nothing.
What Wendy's talking about here, or what Michigan is talking about here, is electrical energy, physical energy, not thought energy. Would she be able to protect herself with thoughts against
sure,
an actual physical weapon?
Absolutely, because you see, as you pointed out, what we're learning here is that everything is energy. Everything is energy. And so we are energy, and it's all about energy. And our thoughts create the physical reality. So you can say, well, there's a physical reality here, but our thoughts are creating that physical reality. So you can use your thoughts to negate a physical reality, absolutely.
Raymond, I love that answer. I'm just going to ask you, is it safe to say that people don't think their thoughts have so much power?
Right.
Because it is so hard to believe? I mean, I guess if you don't believe it, you can't do it. But
that's right. If you don't believe it, you can't do it.
Take that little bit of faith, anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you study the gurus, the ancient gurus, and even not ancient gurus, and what they were able to accomplish, then you can see what the physical world is about. I mean, there were gurus who used to appear in two places at the same time. In other words, in two different cities at the same time. And this is all well recorded. They were gurus that they buried, they dug a hole, 10 feet deep, put them in a coffin, dropped them in, and covered it over, dug them up 6 weeks later, and they just bring themselves back to life. They just put themselves into suspended animation, bring themselves back to life. So if you could do things like that, then it opens up a whole new world. That's why I'm trying to tell people we've entered into a new phase of physical existence, a new phase of human history. Quantum physics has opened this for us, and once we begin to build, we're on the front end of building an entirely new civilization based on quantum physics. It's going to be a world that none of us are able to really, understand. I mean, if all of us came back 100 years from now, we'd be like cavemen who were parachuted into the 20th century. We wouldn't understand anything. But that's the way it's going to be. We could be together right now. We could just dial into AT&T, go boom, 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 and poof, I could be with you right now, instantly. And so that's what it's going to be. We're going to be able to do that kind of travel. You won't need an airplane. We could go to Paris and have coffee and come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's the world, and it sounds crazy, but that's what it's going to be.
Do you agree that would be able to? That's how you're able to connect with the afterlife?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I know this sounds weird, but when my husband was passing away, he swore on his grave that he would be able to connect with me and watch over me, and I communicate with him. I actually communicate with him. He has actually warned me of these people when they have come to hurt me, and I had contacted a person that has something to do with this in Indiana, and she told me that I had telepathic communication with him.
Well, if we study, again, quantum physics, and again, difficult for people to understand this and get the concepts, there's really only one thing that exists, and that's what we call the quantum field. And the one thing, and time as we know it, does not exist. Everything is happening now. All of history, all of the future, everything is happening now. And there's only one thing, the quantum field, and we're all part of the quantum field. So, yes, because you are part of the quantum field. Your husband is part of the quantum field. We're all part of exactly the same thing. Again, it's difficult to understand, but that's what we're learning, and it's opening a whole new world. And it'll be a whole new world of medicine. And what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to transition from the medicine that we've had, which doesn't work, to be the bridge between what doesn't work and what's coming in the future. So even what I'm doing is merely a bridge to where we're going. It's not going to be the medicine of the true future. It's only the medicine of the immediate future. But we desperately need it because the medicine that we have today, conventional medicine, does not work. It only works 10 to 15% of the time, and that's if you're in an accident or you have a medical emergency, that type of thing. It does work. It works pretty well. But the other 85 or 90% of the time, it does not work. So going to a doctor and getting a prescription drug or having surgery is the wrong way to go. What you need to do is keep yourself well. And if you get sick, you need to restore your health. You don't need doctors. You don't need drugs. You don't need surgery. You need to get well and stay well. We know how to do that. We just need to teach it.
Interesting.
Excellent. Wow. What do you think of that, Michigan?
Well, I kind of, in a way, I've kind of been doing what he has been saying with using the power of my mind, because one of the things I do when I'm under attack with the directed energy weapons is that I say I lovingly deflect your negative energy back to its source to be judged by the light.
There you go. And what you need to do is incorporate that, make that part of your being, and just see whatever this energy is, just see it in your mind's eye as just disappearing. See it as a big white cloud that just disappears, just dissipates into nothing, and you'll make it go.
I'll work harder on that, and I appreciate the advice.
Well, thank you for calling.
Excellent. Well, good call, Michigan. We're coming up to a break right here, but we will definitely pick up this conversation back up on the other side. Sound guy, you have a couple. I know you caught a couple of the questions on the interface. Did you want to get those out?
Well, no, there's just a burning question, but there was a discussion of nuts. Did we touch on that? The value of nuts in our diet, Raymond?
Well, nuts are good food, and the big problem, of course, is with modern farming and modern distribution. Many of the nuts we get that are available to us have been roasted, which is not good. And another problem is that they're also pretty old, and the result is they get moldy, and mold, of course, is very dangerous. So
even the nuts that we're getting in the food supply today, we've got to watch with a magnifying glass because they're either of no value or toxic also.
That's right, exactly.
Oh
man, I love nuts.
Yeah, the whole food supply is problematical. Well, nuts get moldy, and molds, of course, produce toxins that are extremely toxic and very carcinogenic, and so you've got to be careful with that. And of course, peanuts are well known for having mold on them and for being carcinogenic, and that's why no one should ever eat peanut butter. I mean, it's one of the worst possible foods you could eat.
Oh, I love peanut butter. Like even the really good oily kind that literally the only ingredients are peanuts?
Well, I would say that you pretty much probably have to make your own. In other words, buy peanuts that you would eat at the health food store, and then make your own peanut butter.
I can do that.
The peanut butter, you see, what the problem is that they are moldy. Peanuts get very moldy, and the mold is carcinogenic. So what they do is they select the peanuts as they come in, and the good peanuts are sent off to make cocktail peanuts, if you will, and the bad peanuts are all sent off to make peanut butter. So almost automatically, all the peanut butter is going to be made with moldy peanuts. And they've measured peanut butter. It has more toxins in it than almost any food. The average peanut butter has something like 185 toxins in it.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Oh my God! Yeah. It's a
okay.
problem.
So like basically canned or jarred nuts. Those are pretty much out of the picture then?
Well, again, yeah, most of them are roasted, you see, and then you really destroy all the goodness in the nut anyway when you roast them. So.
Oh, but it's so delicious.
I know. And that doesn't mean you can't have any. Sure, you can have some, but you've got to be careful and not eat too many of them because if they are moldy, you'll get a lot of toxins out of them.
Well, how did I live all those years just on peanuts and cashew and orange juice? At any rate.
Well, maybe you were lucky. It's a testament to the human body and how well the human body. It's really amazing how we abuse it and still manage to survive.
Well, maybe it was all those good thoughts there, sound guy.
Well, good thoughts help.
I believe it had something to do with faith, and that is all about good thoughts, absolutely. But I want to take advantage of, before we run out of time, I would like to, we've talked about the benefits of vegetables of all colors, and we're talking about nuts, and we talk about meat. There's a plant that's on the planet that prior to 1934 was...
Sounds like we lost sound guy.
Get into We'll get into the human consumable marijuana next, but just on the plant hemp now, because I understand there's all kinds of...
Sound guy, we did not hear you at all for like a minute. You have to start from the very beginning.
Wow, I'm unmuted, so I don't know what happened. I will do that, and I'll make it shorter. What's your position on hemp?
I think it's good food. Hemp seeds are good food. Hemp oil is good oil. I think it's good food.
Now, and because it's predominantly produced, I mean, we can only get hemp products in this country from foreign countries, to my understanding. The laws written in 1934 outlawing that devil weed marijuana, which at the same time picked up all the hemp, which was a major staple of this country for up until 1934. But we can only get it out of foreign countries. So is it something that's contaminated like the rest of it, or is that pretty much an untouched source of healthy?
Well, no, I think if you get organic stuff, it's pretty good. But you have to be careful because the oil does go rancid fairly quickly. So like with anything, fresher is better.
Well, what's your position on in a medical understanding? You can give your personal opinion too, of course, but from your research and study and your position on the human consumable marijuana, the THC-bearing weed.
Well, I'm against that actually because it is harmful. Here in California we have medical pot for medical purposes, but actually, if you look at the medical purposes, there is no purpose for which they prescribe marijuana for which there isn't a safer and better alternative. So if there were no alternatives, you might say, well, gosh, there's no alternative, so we really have to use this even though we don't want to. But there are alternatives, so you don't need to use it. And when you look at the damage that is done by smoking marijuana, if you smoke marijuana, there was an excellent study just a couple of years ago, and they took the mapping of the brain, and they found that if you smoke marijuana for just 2 years, there were already huge areas of the brain that were disabled. So you're doing major damage, and they're now saying that we might be seeing an epidemic of Alzheimer's coming in our young people because of the use of pot today. So not something I would recommend. And there's another factor. People have used pot for a long time, but they weren't using the kind of pot we're using today. The strength of the chemicals in there now, the concentration is far higher than it used to be historically. So we're using something completely different now, and it may be having a completely different effect, but it's certainly having a negative effect.
It just opens up a lot of discussion and a lot of possibilities, and it looks like it's time to go to a break. So.
Right.
Yeah, it is time for break, but I want to read just a little piece of something that was published in the Journal of National Cancer Institute. It says here they were conducting research in the mid-1990s. The study was conducted by the U.S. National Toxicology Program and concluded that mice and rats who were administered high doses of THC over long periods had greater protection against malignant tumors than the untreated controls. Cannabinoids can halt the spread of numerous cancer cells, including prostate cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, and brain cancer. And that appeared in the journal January 2008 edition. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you can do anything with a study, and if you look at just one thing, you can do it, and perhaps the study is correct. I'm not saying it's not correct, but to me a study like that is irrelevant because it doesn't prove anything, and it certainly doesn't tell you what to do to keep yourself healthy. So it's not a very useful study.
This whole idea of we agreed upon it's our perception, it's our thoughts. We create the reality we're in, and I know a lot of people still buy the lie of the limitation of some form or another, and my whole point is that I just argue with anybody who tells me that some part of the body can't rejuvenate or life can't be brought back again. And so from that perspective, I only say that I don't personally believe that there's any part of the human body that doesn't replicate itself again. And if modern medicine is saying absolutely we found a part of the brain that doesn't, I say it's spirit related, which just comes back to, again, thoughts are things, what we think is the truth, what is, and we're all living a lie. And so I bring it in that aspect in the debate.
Well, and that's a legitimate debate, no question.